In the complex arena of human relationships, certain archetypes repeat themselves across time, literature, and experience. One of the most compelling yet controversial ideas is the notion that some women, consciously or unconsciously, do not truly want men to be happy on their own terms. This phenomenon, dubbed the Delilah effect, draws from ancient mythology and modern psychology to illuminate a shadow aspect of male-female dynamics. At its core, it questions whether happiness in men is always welcomed by their partners, or whether it's sometimes seen as a threat to control, validation, or emotional leverage. The roots of the Delilah effect. The term originates from the biblical story of Samson and Delilah. Samson, a man of immense strength and divine favor, is ultimately betrayed by Delilah, who seduces and deceives him to reveal the secret of his power, his uncut hair, so that she can deliver him into the hands of his enemies. The symbolic interpretation is chilling. A woman disempowering a man not for love, but for personal gain, societal expectation, or emotional validation. This ancient narrative echoes in countless modern scenarios, where a man's independence, contentment, or sense of purpose is subtly undermined in romantic relationships. The Delilah effect is not about villainizing women, but about examining the unconscious dynamics that drive emotional entanglement, power plays, and fear of abandonment. Control over happiness. One of the hidden truths of the Delilah effect is that when a man is truly content, grounded, and self-possessed, he becomes harder to control. A man who doesn't need validation from others, especially from his romantic partner, threatens the emotional equilibrium of a relationship built on dependency. In many relationships, consciously or not, women take on the role of emotional barometers, monitoring and managing their partner's feelings to ensure closeness or control. When a man finds happiness outside that system, through purpose, solitude, brotherhood, or self-mastery, it can provoke anxiety or even resentment. This is not a uniquely feminine issue, rather, it highlights a common human tendency to maintain control over the emotional environment. But when the feminine archetype feels her emotional leverage diminishing, she may, like Delilah, attempt to cut the hair of her partner, not literally, but by undermining his purpose, ridiculing his dreams, or planting doubts in his confidence. The fear of emotional abandonment. Another layer to the Delilah effect is rooted in fear, specifically, the fear that a self-contained man no longer needs intimacy, affection, or even companionship. Many women, socialized to be caregivers and emotional centers in relationships, unconsciously derive their value from being needed. When a man becomes too self-reliant or too fulfilled without their emotional input, it can trigger a fear of irrelevance. This is why, in some relationships, a man's moments of joy, stillness, or victory are met not with celebration, but with suspicion, passive aggression, or emotional sabotage. The woman is not necessarily malicious, but rather fearful of being left behind, emotionally or existentially. In such cases, she may unconsciously seek to tether him back to the relationship by stirring conflict or diminishing his happiness. Happiness is rebellion. For many men, happiness is not a default state. It is hard-earned, carved out from the pressures of responsibility, identity, and expectation. When a man finds happiness in solitude, purpose, or brotherhood, it represents a quiet rebellion against a culture that often frames male identity through female approval. A man at peace with himself no longer plays by the traditional rules of emotional exchange. He does not seek to be fixed, mothered, or molded. This can be threatening in relationships where the woman has assumed the role of emotional manager. His happiness, therefore, becomes a kind of emotional insubordination, a signal that he is beyond influence. In response, some partners may unconsciously attempt to destabilize that happiness through criticism, guilt, or emotional withdrawal. Breaking the pattern. The Delilah effect is not destiny. Many women want their partners to flourish and become their fullest selves, but this requires awareness, maturity, and emotional security. Likewise, men must cultivate discernment. Is your partner truly cheering you on, or does she only support the version of you that remains dependent, insecure, or emotionally pliable? Healthy relationships thrive when both partners celebrate each other's growth, even when that growth leads to unfamiliar emotional territory. A man's happiness should not be seen as a threat, but as a foundation for deeper, more authentic connection. Conclusion. The Delilah effect isn't about blaming women. It's about recognizing a recurring dynamic where male happiness is subtly eroded under the guise of intimacy or care. To break this cycle, both men and women must confront their own fears about power, control, and emotional independence. Only then can they build relationships that are rooted in mutual empowerment rather than covert dependency. True love does not seek to bind, manipulate, or diminish. It nurtures the wild, sovereign spirit in each partner. And when a man finds happiness, the greatest gift a woman can give is not control, but celebration.